All right, good morning and welcome to this webinar. Today's webinar is to talk about the brand new policy that MSYSA has put in place, which begins effective August the 1st. The policy is the Behavior Expectation Policy. My name is Greg Smith, and I serve as Executive Director for the Maryland State Youth Soccer Association. For those who may not be familiar, the Maryland State Youth
Alexa off.
Association is the highest administrative authority for the amateur youth sport of soccer here within our jurisdiction, which includes the entire state of Maryland and the District of Columbia. We proudly serve more than 200 member clubs and leagues every year who collectively register more than 71,000 players. We serve by educating, supporting, promoting, and providing. And one of the things that we do is exactly what we're here to talk about today, is we put in place policies that help with the growth of the game and with the development of the game and for all who participate. I want to start by thanking everyone who has already played such an important role in helping to create this policy, starting with our referee leadership. We're fortunate today to have a number of our referee leaders on with us, to include our state referee administrator, our state director of instruction, and our state youth referee administrator. And in addition to those individuals, we also had feedback and input from all of our certified assigners who operate within our jurisdiction. And this draft policy was also sent out to all of our member club and league leaders, and they were encouraged to review and provide feedback before our board of directors ultimately voted and put in place this policy, which again goes into effect on August 1st of this year, which is 2023. So we'll start with the overall purpose of this policy. I do hope that everyone has had a chance to read the policy. If you have not, it is available on our website. You can find that by going to msysa.org. On the top right-hand side of our homepage, you click About Us, and then you click the tab that says Bylaws and Policies. This policy is available both in English and also in Spanish. The whole point of this policy is really, like you see there in the first bullet, to help further prevent the abuse that is occurring at our matches, all of our sanctioned matches across the jurisdiction. And again, any of us who have been to a match recently has probably seen this firsthand. And as the state association, hand in hand with the referee leadership, we want to do all that we can to improve this situation. And this policy is 100% designed to help improve those behaviors that we are seeing on the sidelines at our sanctioned matches. To be very clear, this policy applies to every single stakeholder that you see listed there. So it's designed purposely to be sort of all-encompassing and to cast a very wide net. So in short, basically anyone who is there at a match that is, watching that match, this policy applies to them. And again, the whole goal of this is to improve the behaviors that we are seeing at our sanctioned events. And to be very clear yet again, this doesn't just apply during the actual match, but it applies before and immediately following and those surrounding areas as well. Again, unfortunately, we're hearing that sometimes incidents are occurring either right after a match has concluded, or even in the surrounding area as individuals are leaving that field or that complex and heading back to the parking lot. So this applies to all of those stakeholders and to all of those situations. We're going to walk through this in the same way that the policy itself is laid out. And so we'll start with sort of the responsibilities and who has a role to play in helping the referee leadership and in helping the state association to bring about these improvements to behavior. So all of our member clubs absolutely have a role to play. And we have put into this policy that ultimately our clubs are responsible for the actions, for those behaviors of all of the coaches, players, and spectators who are at these sanctioned matches representing those clubs. And we want to make that loud and clear that, again, we all have a role to play, and that absolutely includes our clubs. Furthermore, within the club environment, all of the coaches who are working with players on behalf of those clubs, they have a role to play as well, and they are to help provide support and spectator control. Those coaches, for the most part, know a lot of the parents and guardians of the players that they are working with, in some cases almost every single day of the week during the season. And we want the coaches to play an active role in helping to improve the behavior that we're talking about here today. And then the third bullet you can see there, we're asking clubs to please provide instructions to their coaches on how they can carry out sort of this expectation that we have as far as the role that the coaches play in helping to improve the sideline behavior, not just for the players and themselves as coaches, but also for their supporters, the spectators who are there as well. So the very first one that we kind of get into the details on are what we call the parents and guardians, but in general, the spectators. This may include other family members, other loved ones, or it may include friends who are there cheering on those teams. You know, and again, this is all really rooted in this idea of we do amateur youth soccer. And we're at these games, we want to make sure that the focus of our cheering and on what we're vocalizing and what we're cheering for, that it's on the players and it's on their play, and that we're being positive with what we're choosing to say and how we're choosing to say it. And what we don't want, and you can see in the policy, but also on the screen here, we don't want for those supporters to be, it's worded, persistently addressing the referees or the assistant referees at any time. We have all seen it, I'm sure. I have witnessed it personally myself, where one or more individuals on the sidelines will just essentially be attacking either it's the assistant referee who's working the line, or communicating directly to the referee in the center of the field. And it's constant and it's persistent, and it's all the things we've heard as far as, are you blind? You can't make a right call. You missed it. We're not interested in that continuing. And so spectators are not to be persistently addressing the referees. They are encouraged to support and cheer on the players, and that is the extent. There are some allowable exceptions. Most of these are common sense. If a referee, for one or more reasons, initiates a conversation, well, of course, you can continue that conversation so long as the referee wants that conversation to be going on for whatever it may be. Or if there is some sort of an emergency or a safety concern, it's certainly appropriate to still point that out, because it is possible that maybe it hasn't been noticed yet by the referee team. But it is really, really important to note that with this policy, referees are authorized and empowered to sanction the head coach of the team that the individual is supporting by being there as a spectator for irresponsible behavior by a spectator. I'm going to say that again, because this is something where this is one of the biggest changes that has been put in place by this policy. So to be very clear, in the event that a spectator, a supporter for a team, is behaving in a way that is not permissible, that we're not wanting, that this policy is talking about, and we go into much more detail in the policy, the referee is able and is encouraged to take action to sanction the head coach of that team in an attempt to change this behavior, in an attempt to stop the behaviors that we do not want to continue to see on these sidelines. Again, if there are any questions or comments, you can certainly stop anytime and ask, or you can save it for the end. It's totally up to you. The next category are the players themselves. This policy does not impact anything that's already in place. All of the ways in which a referee can address behaviors, within the lines during a match are already governed by both the laws of the game and any of the specific competition rules that may also be in place based on the tournaments that our teams are participating in, or the league play, etc. So this policy does not add or change anything there as it pertains to the players. And again, we should all be reminded that some competitions, some leagues, some tournaments may have additional penalties in place for any players that do engage in misconduct during a match within those competitions. So again, please do familiarize yourself with those competition rules that you'll be playing in, so that you are familiar with what additional actions may be taken by the league leadership or the tournament leadership if something like this were to occur. But other than that, nothing has changed as far as this policy is concerned for the misconduct that may be shown or taking place by players on the field during the matches. So then one of the final stakeholders here that the policy addresses are the team officials. And these are the individuals that appear on that game day roster, typically called head coach, assistant coach, team manager, trainer, any of these individuals who are permitted to be within the technical area for the team during the match. And we kind of all know this to be true, but the policy sort of reinstates that these team officials are absolutely role models. They're role models for all of these players that they are working with on their team, for sure, but also for any and all of the players from other teams and spectators who might be watching them. They look up to the team officials for the role that they play, for the instruction that they provide. And it's really, really important that these individuals, these team officials, maintain the highest standards of conduct for themselves and their players, and for, again, the spectators, the supporters in all matches. And you can see there the second bullet. If these individuals, these coaches, these team officials are acting in hostile, negative, sarcastic, or otherwise ill-intended ways towards referees or towards the other players or to the other team officials, that is certainly not the way that we expect the team officials to be behaving. It is not the type of a role model that we are asking them to be. And this policy is addressing that a little bit more, I guess, firmly than possibly other policies have addressed before. If you have read this policy, you'll know that the first two paragraphs talk about how this behavioral expectation policy has been put in place to further build upon the MSYSA zero tolerance policy that is already in place. And this certainly adds a few more words and again, kind of builds it out a little bit more and is a bit more explicit as far as what the expectations are and what those referees are able to do if those expectations are not being met. And so continuing on with the team officials, it's really important to know that any person that is in that technical area that I just talked about, per the law of the games, can be shown cards by the referee. So that's first and foremost important to know. You can see here a few ideas of what the coaches should not be doing. This idea of interacting directly or indirectly with the coaches or players of the opposing teams. It's just, there's no need to do that in a negative or hostile way. If there are other reasons to be interacting in ways that are positive or neutral at best, that's still okay. But this idea of engaging with the opponents in hostile, sarcastic, negative ways, again, most of us have probably seen that, and this policy is making it very clear that is not to continue anymore. And this idea of dissenting to any call by the referee is also what we are looking to further, reduce or clamp down on going forward. The final stakeholder that this policy addresses are the referees themselves. While I do not believe we have a lot of this going on, it is really important for everyone to know that referees too are important stakeholders in all of this, and all of the referees working all of these sanctioned matches are expected to maintain a professional and a respectful demeanor at all times. And in the event that a team official experiences something other than professional and respectful demeanor, those team officials are encouraged to please report that. The way to report that depends on that competition that you're in. If you're experiencing this within league play, you're encouraged to please communicate that in writing to league leadership, whoever your point person may be, for example. And then the league leadership is expected to pass that on to both the assigner so that they are aware, and also our state youth referee administrator. And if you're playing within a tournament, same idea, but in that case, you would communicate that in writing to the tournament director or your point person for the tournament. And then they communicate it to both the assigner and then also the state youth referee administrator. So that is at a high level what this policy is, why it's being put in place. Again, it goes into effect August the 1st of 2023. And I want to just pause to see if there are any questions or any clarification that anyone would seek. And I also want to see if any of our referees
I've got it.
We're on would like to make any comments as well. So we're just going to kind of open it up. Well, as you're thinking about your questions, I just want to, again, take a moment to thank our state referee administrator, Jimmy Graham, who is on the call today, our state director of instruction, Larry Middleman, who is on today, and then also our state youth referee administrator, Gabriel Ado. All three are on today, and I could not be more proud of how closely and how well the state association has been working with referee leadership over the past, probably going on 2 years now, I think, to both improve the environment like we've talked about today, but also to help recruit referees and to retain referees. It's a tall order, but again, the referees are such an important stakeholder group in all of this. But Larry, Gabe, or Jimmy, did you have anything you wanted to add or share?
Yeah, I just have a couple comments, Greg. Thanks. From the refereeing perspective, we are going to send out a written directive within the next few days to all our referees, letting them know about this policy and how specifically they should handle spectator irresponsible behavior. And we are also going to have our own webinar so that referees who have any questions about how to enact this policy will have a chance to discuss it so that we can answer any of those types of questions. And we're also explaining this to all the new referees that are coming in the classes over the next few weeks. If anyone on this webinar that has been involved in a discussion that we've had with some clubs will know this, but the rest of you may not, because of the demographics of refereeing these days. 3/4 of the new referees are teenagers, and which means now that half of the certified referees in the state of Maryland are teenagers. So there is a learning curve for teenagers to be able to put in place a policy like this. So it's very possible there will be uneven application of it, and there might be a learning curve we have to go through with the referees to get them to use it correctly.
Thank you, Larry. Yeah, that's a great point. And thank you again for helping to communicate this with all of the referees, and that's fantastic. Jimmy or Gabe, anything to add?
Nothing from my end, Greg. Thank you.
Hi, Greg. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for jumping on. Greg, thanks for the great summary. I just wanted to clarify 2 main points, and just for the sake of full transparency. So team officials, depending on league, tournament, things like that, but they should be not necessarily whomever's on the bench or the technical area, but just keep in mind whomever's on the roster should be the only folks from a technical area perspective that are on the bench. So that may have some ambiguity, and to Larry's point, as we work with this, just keep that in mind. But more importantly, if there's only one coach on the roster and in the technical area on the bench, and that coach happens to be sent off, that means that the game will be terminated. So just be aware of that point. And then the second point is, I just want to make sure that everyone understands that we are now, as referees, treating spectators and their behaviors as if the head coach is doing them. So if a spectator behaves irresponsibly per the laws of the game, that would follow what the head coach would be doing. The head coach is responsible and will be receiving the misconduct, whether that's a warning, caution, or send-off, warning, yellow, or red card specifically. So now the laws of the game have never given the referee jurisdiction over spectators, and the state is, because of the situation that we're in, arguably we may be overcorrecting, but that's where the state of affairs lie today. We will be, as referees, maintaining decorum and responsible behavior by putting that responsibility on the head coach. So whatever that spectator does, it would be equal to what the head coach would be doing. So I have a first question. I'm so happy that we have some collaboration here. So I think it's Alan. I can't tell from the name here on Zoom, but you're up.
Thanks, Gabe. Yeah, Alan from Liverpool. So quick, I guess the 2 main concerns for us is, one, how's the referee going to identify which team that parent is from? And then what is the process for the referees? I guess if we are dishing out cards on that process, what's the process for the coaches maybe to have the conversation with the referee with regards to that? In terms, can the coaches have a conversation with the referee or the assistant referee in that process to be able to have an opportunity to address it before the card is actually issued? And then what's the sort of process afterwards, right? If they are issued a card, and obviously the coaches feel, judged incorrectly, what is the process then for appeal to ensure, obviously I think there may be fines or what's the consequences essentially if we're obviously going to see more cards towards coaches, and then what's the process going to be afterwards in terms of consequences and everything else?
So great questions. I think that was 3. I'll take the first one and I'll share with Larry, and he'll take the add to the first one and take the second. And then the third, I think, is up to other folks, I guess, or other leadership. But the first question is, I think that it's going to be obvious. It's typically obvious whose supporter, whose spectator it is because of the outcome, right? So if a foul is committed and there's disagreement, typically it's with the opposite side, right? If there's an offside decision, for or against, typically we will connect the dots with the behavior itself because of the incident. But we expect that there will be some situations where a referee cannot identify a specific spectator or even the side, which supporting is which spectators is supporting which side. So we do plan to instruct referees to collaborate with the 2 head coaches and say, hey, we need to have a decision here. We're not exactly sure because this is going to evolve. Some referees may handle it a little bit differently, but both coaches may get misconduct, either a warning, a caution, or a send-off, depending on what that behavior was. We're hoping that those are minimal and that we are trying to curb this behavior for the better. And, the first few weeks, first few games, first few incidents will lead to better behavior. And it starts with the club and the coach directing their spectators to behave responsibly. So to answer your question, there's no perfect answer, but I think most of the cases will be easily identifiable. The ones that are not will have some direction and best practices. And if we can't determine, what's going on, and if it's severe enough, the referee does have the opportunity and option to terminate the match right then and there. So that's an extreme situation. We hope that we have very, very few of those. I'll let Larry answer the second question.
Let me just add to the first one, and then you're going to have to tell me what the second one was, because your question addresses something that we struggled with when we came up with the specific line item instructions to referees. That is also in the written policy. We tried to cover all different scenarios, and it got so cumbersome that we simplified it. And we realized by simplifying it, as Gabriel said, there may be situations where the spectator can't be identified, but we still think that in most cases, they will be able to identify which team they're associated with. One of the other options, instead of giving a card to the coach, one of the other options is to ask the coach to tell a specific spectator to just leave, go to the parking lot, rather than issue a card. So that is also one of the things that the referee will have the authority to do, short of giving a yellow or red card. Now, what was the second question?
About approaching the referee to communicate. And I know you would like to answer that one.
Yeah, I mean, again, back to the scenario recently, I was at a tournament and the opposition coach was bombarding the referee. Every call was, he was screaming at the ref. And so, I essentially shouted to the referee on the field. Probably that was the mistake, right? In terms of, hey, are you going to do something about it? Because obviously he's influencing the game. And so I ended up getting the red card because I've questioned the referee on the other coach's behavior. Now, is there a process going to be in place for that? Because obviously the referee got flustered. I'm trying to protect his, not necessarily protect his back, but protect my players, because he's calling for red cards for a 10-year-old kid and, screaming at every decision the referee makes. So he's influencing the game, right? And so I'm trying to protect the players, but in doing so, I ended up as the one that was punished. So is there a process going to be in place for that to be addressed? So in other words, can the coaches have a conversation, whether that's pull the referee to the side, or can he have a conversation with the assistant referee to ensure that those, you know, are being addressed equally and fairly, essentially?
Well, that really is going to be up to an individual referee of how they handle a situation. I can tell you that the instruction we give, which also points out, you know, acceptable emotional reactions to things that happen on the field, as long as they're not exaggerated or consistent. You know, if someone, you know, yells referee and that's it, we tell them that you have to expect people's emotions to react to things on the field. But we also tell them that if it rises beyond that and it's truly dissent, to deal with it early in the game or it will escalate. Okay, now that's the instruction, and we teach that to all the referees, all the new referees, and all the existing referees. As they recertify, they have an online lesson that says that, so they see that year after year after year. But again, half of them are teenagers, and how much of it sinks in, plus the ability of a 14-year-old to confront an adult, you see the problem. We're doing our best to educate them and instruct them to deal with these kind of things early, so that in your specific case, to hopefully deal with the other coach that should have been dealt with before you even had to say anything. And then when you said something, then you know, the referee was probably flustered at that point and really didn't know what to do. You know,
But I will.
But there is a, you know, there's still a learning curve, because there's so many young people that are referees today.
So Alan, I wanted to piggyback off that final thought from Larry and say, we encourage you to go through the channels, go through your club, and the club will get to the assigner, and the assigner will get it to us. But that feedback from these types of situations is critical. We have, I think, 39 referee coaches, aka mentors, and 2,000, or, you know, approximately referees. Right, the ratio is just not there for us to touch every single referee on a consistent basis. But if we don't get feedback, good and bad, we're not able to share that and develop some training materials and sessions for these types of situations that happen. And video also, almost all games now, or most games, are being videoed. That's also helpful. So feel free to use the channels to send us that feedback as you.
And I kind of set up that question really to lead to the third, right? So there's obviously going to be mistakes. There's going to be situations, right? So then what is the process if there are fines as implications or suspensions, or, you know, what is the process then going to be to look at that situation? You know, for example, if a coach is getting a red card because of parent behavior, how's that going to impact their next games? And, you know, and, you know, leading on from that. So that's kind of why I set up that question to lead to what's the process for appeals, and then what's the situation going to be moving forward for that process?
It's the same process for any other red card that you get. And the club, the league or tournament decides on the discipline, and anyone can appeal that back to MSYSA, and there would be a hearing process if you know, if that's the appropriate next step. But you would have to start with your club and league based on what they decide, and any party within that decision, including the referee, can appeal that decision.
Well, thank you. Tudor.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Greg, thanks for organizing the meeting. Larry and Gabe, thank you for your insights for us to better understand the new policy. I just wanted to follow up on one of your comments, Gabriel. Once, if there is only one coach and there is an assistant coach that's actually on the roster, but he's not on the players and in the official area side, he's with the parents. In case the official coach gets dismissed can the assistant coach who's on the roster step in, or does he need to be in the official area from the beginning of the game?
No, that's okay. And I would hope that we're consistent on that, but by the law, the assistant coach is on the roster, and he or she can walk over to the bench and take over.
All right.
And
Because
tutor.
I had situations where I was also a parent, but also on the roster,
That's
and I
okay.
was on the parent sides, and in one instance I was allowed, but in another instance the referee said no, I had to be there from the beginning of the game.
Yeah, and Larry can jump in on the technicality on that. I'm not sure that in your games and our this level that we should hold it to that letter of the law.
I agree.
But,
all right, thank you.
Yeah.
No, Gabriel's correct. If the person is listed on the roster and is a sanctioned coach, if they happen to be in that moment on the other side of the field and the head coach gets sent off, they can come over and take over. The issue is it has to be someone who has gone through the safe sport training and the intro to safety and healthy playing environment training in order to have the certification to be able to be on the bench. But they don't have to be there from the beginning of the game.
All right. Last call for any questions.
Hi, Greg. This is Kellen Ehrenfried with Bowie Youth Soccer Academy. How are you?
Hi, Kellen. I'm fine. How are you today?
I'm living the dream, still vertical.
Good. Excellent.
One question, and this just might be for future conversations. Is there a possible way of including clubs, coaches, including them more on the referee decision-making going forward? It just seems to me like we're separating the two even further than it was.
I'm going to ask for a clarifier. When you say include more, do you mean like as the policy was created, getting input from club and league leadership, or?
Well, that plus maybe future conversations, including the referee organization with coaches on what to do going forward. It just for my personal reasons. I was given a red card because of parents fighting players on the field from opposing teams and all that good stuff. Where, let's face it, as much as we would love to control spectators, sometimes it's almost impossible, right? Unless we make them leave the field. We don't want to get into that as a club. I understand that it's our responsibility to control our spectators, but it just seems to me like we continue to separate the different organizations. If coaches aren't allowed to even approach a referee, to my opinion, it's separating it even further for the same sport. I don't know. I know it's two organizations. It's a state versus a referee association. I think if we brought them closer together, we could get to a better point in the future.
Well, Kellen, again, thank you for helping to clarify that. I think your comments are fantastic and spot on. You've heard me use words today like stakeholders. We all have a role to play in the growth of this game and the development of this game, and that includes referees, that includes coaches, like you just mentioned, it includes the state association. We really, truly are all in this together. The first thing I will say, as far as the creation, the review, the drafts, the feedback, we were very purposeful in wanting to be inclusive of all the stakeholder groups. But I will say that as a state association, we did not send the policy directly to those listed as coaches and team officials. We did send the draft policy to all of our club and league leaders. And that's a pretty broad term that includes people who are listed as being president, for example, or technical director or executive director or registrar. There's lots of titles that fall in that category that we refer to as club and league leaders. As far as if those individuals sent it out to all of the coaches that they work with, I'm not sure, but your feedback is certainly heard and received, and I agree that it would be really good for us to continue having these discussions and collaborating, because I think the more we do that, I do think we'll only further improve, for example, the behavior on the sidelines that we're here talking about today. So thank you for that feedback. Larry or Jimmy, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I have. Kellen, thanks for your question and comment. Gabriel and I have met with, I guess, about a half a dozen clubs in the state now. We had a couple of in-person meetings, but now we've gone to Zoom meetings where we have a conversation with the clubs and their coaches as to how we teach the referees, what they're taught, their learning curve versus a player's learning curve. It's really an understanding conversation to try and get people on the same page as to what you were alluding to, rather than keeping everyone separated. So we would love to be able to talk to your coaches on a Zoom meeting before the season starts. I can get your email address and send you an email and follow up and see if we can coordinate something.
Sure. I appreciate that, Larry. I mean, I'm part of the admin with Bowie Youth Soccer, so I do get those drafts. And sometimes when you read through them, when you weren't part of the original conversation, it's almost like it's directed as a negativity towards not only the coaches as a coach, but as a club facility on its own. And that's, I shouldn't say that's the way I took it, because I know there's a lot more behind the scenes. So I appreciate your answer.
Absolutely. All right, one last call. All right, well, again, thank you all so much. This recording will probably be edited a little bit, trimmed down, and will be made available. I'll share that link on a future member update email. Please do utilize this recording as you see fit for sharing with others within your communities, others that you serve, others who might need or could benefit from watching this and learning a little bit more about this policy, what it's designed to do, and how it's designed to work going forward. If you haven't been watching the Women's World Cup, please do. Our team plays tonight at 9 o'clock versus Netherlands. Should be a very good match. And we always like to end with saying thank you for all that you are doing. We truly are all in this together. And together we are absolutely making a difference in our communities through the game of soccer. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll all be in touch soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.